D.
D.
Toledo.
Toledo.
One more time.
D. Toledo.
I'm 10th grade.
11th grade.
11th grade.
11th grade.
We're set.
All right. You guys ready?
Yeah.
We good?
All right. Let's have we have quiet and turn our phones off. Ready?
Yeah.
Whenever you are.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Beit Din. I am Rabbi Tall, and this is my colleague, Rabbi Silver.
Hello, everybody. We are gathered here today because of a case brought before the court by Rachel Rubenstein.
In the month of Av, Miss Rubenstein was in a self-driving car manufactured by Aliva Industries. Suddenly, the car swerved in order to avoid a jaywalking pedestrian. Moments later, the car crashed into Shimon Shalom's vehicle. And now, Mr. Shalom is suing Ms. Rubenstein to recuperate the cost of the hospital stay, his time away from work, and the damage done to his car.
And so, we must determine today who is liable for payment. We will consult with biblical and rabbinic sources. We will also interview the CEO of the car company and Ms. Rubenstein herself. And finally, we ascertain who is responsible for payment damages to Mr. Shimon.
Hi, my name is Rachel Rubenstein.
And I am Ellie Levine, the CEO of Aliva Industries.
Since I was operating the self-driving car, there was nothing I could do to avoid this accident. The vehicle doesn't have manual override, meaning that when Mr. Shalom suddenly appeared out of nowhere, I was unable to swerve out of the way to avoid hitting the car.
The self-driving car did what it was designed to do. It is programmed to swerve out of the way to avoid pedestrians. If the car did not properly move, the collision could have been fatal. Our vehicles are designed to act in the safest way possible and to preserve life and limb.
All the same, I am not the one liable and should not be sued.
Likewise, Aliva Industries does not see itself as liable to pay for these damages. I hope you, the Beit Din, will settle this dispute.
First, we must answer the question, which types of halacha damages are at play in this case?
Well, Bava Kama 812 says, one who wounds his friend is obligated to pay 5 things: damages, suffering, medical expenses, time off work, and embarrassment. Musha is not applicable in Mr. Shalom's case. Nezik, Ripui, and Shevet are easy to calculate. All we have to do is add up the medical expenses, vehicular damages, and money lost from his time off work.
It is more difficult, however, to calculate Sa'al. Sa'al refers to pain and suffering. Once the issue of liability is determined, whoever is held responsible ought to pay punitive damages as well.
Now, we come to the question of liability. We must answer, who is liable to pay for Mr. Shalom's damages, medical expenses, and lost wages? Or is nobody liable at all?
Clearly, someone is liable. Shemot 22:5 says that when a fire is started and spreads to thorns so that stacked, standing, or growing grain is consumed, he who started the fire must make restitution. This source simply establishes that a party is liable. The fire, in this case, was the damage to Mr. Shalom's car and his injuries. Since a fire happened, so to speak, it cannot be the case that no one is responsible.
Well, then, doesn't that mean it must be either me or Miss Levine?
You're saying that one of us is liable.
Well, let's examine the question of liability for each of these women one at a time. Let's start with Miss Rubenstein.
Miss Rubenstein is the owner of the car, and Bavakama 310 speaks to her situation. It says, there are cases where one is liable for the actions of one's ox, even though he is exempt for his actions, and cases where one is liable for his own actions, even though he is exempt from his ox's actions.
It seems to me that this means that an owner is not always necessarily liable for the actions of their ox, or car in this case, but how do we know when the owner is or isn't liable?
What makes the difference here is the issue of autonomy. Due to the fact that Miss Rubenstein was unable to control the car because of the pre-programming function, she is technically not responsible.
Oh, thank goodness.
You're saying that we are reliable?
Well, as we address the issue of Aliva's liability, let us also answer the question. Should the Beit Din instruct Miss Levine to change the programming used in his self-driving cars because of the ethical and halacha concerns?
No. When the car swerved to avoid the passenger, the pedestrian, it did so to preserve its life. Therefore, its programming was in accordance with Jewish law, pikut nefesh, to save a life.
But doesn't Shemot 36 state that if the ox was in the habit of going and the owner failed to guard the ox, the owner must restore?
Some rabbi might consider Shemot 36 to apply, but it doesn't. This case has never happened before, and the car acted on the correct pre-programming directive. Therefore, no one has the reason to restore.
This could have been a catastrophe where a life wouldn't have been saved. However, thanks to Miss Levine's programming, a life was saved. Clearly, Aliva is not liable, and Mr. Levine has no reason to change the programming of the car.
Thank God.
But then, who is liable? Who will make Mr. Shalom whole?
As it says in Shemot 22:35-36, when a man's ox injures his neighbor's ox and it dies, they shall sell the live ox and divide its price. They shall also divide the dead animal.
In Bava Kama 35b, it states, money whose ownership is in doubt is equally divided. This source lands us on our only viable option of who's responsible. A split between Miss Rubenstein and Aliva's insurance companies. Essentially, this division of money relates to the process of an insurance company. Everybody gives funds, and that divided pays for the damages or price of the accident.
So today, we have examined multiple sources to give you an answer here on who is liable for payment. What damages were at play, and why the Aliva Corporation shouldn't have to change their programming. So my friends, I hope this Beit Din has left you satisfied.
Thank you.
Judges, you now have 8 minutes for questions.
I have a question. So, a couple moments ago, you mentioned the effect if an ox gores another's ox, but the ox had not done this previously, and so the owner of the ox who did the goring and the owner of the ox who suffered the goring, they split it, right? So, why then aren't you saying Mr. Shalom pays half?
Well, essentially, just looking how it works just civilly, everyone has insurance. So conceptually, insurance is just everybody paying a fund. So when it's in doubt, when the fault is at doubt, we go to a division of money. So we just kind of translated that to the concept of insurance.
Okay, but you said it was the insurance belonging to Aliva and to Ms. Rubenstein. What happens, why not Mr. Shalom's insurance?
Well,
Because he was going in the he essentially was just driving his car normally, and Aliva's Industries vehicle, which is owned by Miss Rubenstein's vehicle is the one that actually did the swerving, so he isn't at fault at all.
And also because Mr. Shalom wasn't like Ellie was saying, is that Mr. Shalom was not the one responsible for the actual accident and the damages. The damages happened to him, so it would not make sense for him to be the person, like, it wouldn't make sense for his insurance to cover it, because normally when you are in a situation where you aren't the one responsible for an accident, you agree with, you like make a situation with someone who was involved and responsible, and they're the ones who are supposed to use their insurance in a lot of cases.
So Mr. Shalom shouldn't pay because he's not responsible. How is Ms. Rubenstein responsible?
Because she is the owner of the car.
Well, she's not like necessarily uniform, like responsible, but she's in that category of doubt that was mentioned in I forgot the exact source, but basically, like we said, when the fault is in doubt, then it's about the division of money. So she's in that category.
And in the division of money, was I correct in hearing that the division is between Ms. Rubenstein and her insurance company?
It's Miss Rubenstein's insurance company and the Leva Corporation.
Ah, okay. I wasn't clear on that. Okay, well that clarifies that for me. So, in the beginning, you mentioned punitive damages. I can't recall because it went very, very quickly. The reference to punitive damages. Do you think that in this case, punitive damages are indeed necessary?
Yeah,
Or
well,
are there different kinds of damages?
well, there are. I mean, we brought up the different kinds mentioned in forgot
In the
this.
beginning.
Yeah, in one of our sources, and
In Bava Kama 8:1 through 2.
right. So we think that can fall into those in that category.
So these damages that they would be paying are not punitive. In other words, they're compensatory.
Yes.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Did you analyze whether the pedestrian might be partially responsible?
We did, yes, but because we are unaware who the pedestrian is, we can't hold him accountable for the accident.
Kind of we almost thought it would be irrelevant to be bringing up in this conversation because it just wouldn't be feasible and impossible to hold him accountable.
Is he at fault? Yes, he is mostly the one to blame, but unfortunately we
Without
aren't-
knowledge of who he
without
is.
knowledge of who he is, we are unable for him to be sued or for him to pay for the damages of Mr. Shalom.
So does it seem fair that the person you think is most likely at fault doesn't pay and the people who are paying didn't really do anything wrong?
I think that because, again, a question of fairness is definitely like present in this case, but I think that because of the fact that we don't know who the jaywalking pedestrian is, and that is basically just completely obliterated from any option of liability. So I think that the question of like fairness, it's in the way that they've decided on our case is that it is going to be divided between two parties in order to accommodate for all the people involved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break and then